Hello, Dr. Mark. Hello, Dr. Mark.
I'm here, Doc.
Oh, okay. So once it is 12,
right.
so we'll commence immediately. So people will start.
All right, bro.
Thank you.
Kalista. Okay, then ask Martha those plastics where they're there. We are carrying some to the hospital.
Good afternoon, all. We are welcome to the 14th series of the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. On the permission of the Dean of Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, University of Jos, in person of Professor P.H. Bamei, I gladly welcome you all to this another series, 14th in the series of Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, University of Jos faculty seminar presentation. I indeed very happy having you here, and I am very sure from the dashboard we have quite a lot of colleagues joining from both within the country and outside the country for this very important discussion. At least going through the dashboard, the Dean of the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine is is indeed a concise topic, is rhetorical in approach, and is fully loaded. And a very seasoned presenter, a wildlife veterinarian, a conservationist, in person of Dr. Mark Rene Ofua, who is currently the West African representative or consultant to the White Africa Fund, which is a non-NGO committed to the preservation of African potential, African natural beauty, potential, and wildlife. And Double has the CEO of St. Mark Animal Hospital, Ajah, Lagos, has been invited for this very important discussion. And again, going by the happenings, at least in the country, just about 2 months ago, we all heard about the attack of a zookeeper by a lion that he himself raised somewhere in one of our foremost tertiary institutions in Nigeria, and also coupled with indiscriminate display of wild animals, especially for sales on the social media currently. We can all allude to this fact. So that is why this topic is quite timely and is very important at this time. And I'm happy that we have invited a seasoned wildlife veterinarian who has indeed make an impact for some of us that have been watching the satellite television. You always attest to this fact that Dr. Mark is a global brand from Nigeria, and I'm also happy that he is indeed my classmate at the University of Ibadan, and he has been known for this. He is known to always trying something new, innovative, and he has created a landmark in wildlife aspect as it's concerned. So without wasting our time, I'll go to the schedule of today's presentation, the introduction which I've just carried out. Then I'll hand over the baton to the Dean of Faculty of Veterinary Medicine in person of Professor Pavin Obamei to continue from here. So he'll give the brief remarks and then the biographies and others will follow. Professor, you are on, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mirende. I think you've already done a fantastic job in the introduction. I'm very happy today that we'll be talking about why wildlife, but then why not? This is very important because I'm a lover of wildlife. I love to see wild animals. I love to handle them, touch them a little bit. And I think it is that my little love for wildlife that brought me to Dr. Mark last year in the MVMA Congress in Lagos, Victoria Island, Lagos. I was sitting next to another veterinarian. Of course, veterinarians were all over the place because that is our conference. And then he told me that there is somebody who likes snakes. And maybe has even come to this conference, this Congress with snakes. And I said, wow, that's great. I would love to see his snakes. So he gave me Dr. Mark's number. And I chatted him on WhatsApp. And he responded promptly. And then I discovered that he was around at the conference. And in fact, that he was somewhere outside by the door. So I went out looking for him. And as God will have it, I met the snake man, Dr. Snake Man. And then he had a few pythons in a bag. And I had the privilege of having him bring out those pythons and for me to hold one of the pythons and take a fantastic picture with one of those pythons. That picture is the picture I've been sharing here and there, and it's memorable that almost 20 years after I handled a python in the city of Kota Baru, Kelantan state of Malaysia, northeastern part of Malaysia, and then in Uganda, East Africa, also python. Nigeria, in my own country, I was having the privilege to handle a python, and that was beautiful. And I want to once again thank Dr. Mark for giving me that beautiful privilege. It's wonderful when you have people who are passionate about wild animals, because wild animals are endangered. A lot of them are endangered species, especially in Africa, where at the slightest opportunity, we want to kill the snake. At the slightest opportunity, we want to kill the lion. At the slightest opportunity, we want to kill the tiger. At the slightest opportunity, we want to kill an elephant, kill any wild animal we can find around. This afternoon, we are highly privileged to have Dr. Mark with us. And Dr. Mark will be making this wonderful presentation. He's, of course, a conservationist, a One Health crusader as a veterinarian. And like Dr. Mirende has already talked about him being at St. Mark's Animal Hospital and Shelter. That's his address, St. Mark's Animal Hospital and Shelter, number 4 Nwanko Ibusa Drive off Ado Road, Ajah, Lagos State, Nigeria. Dr. Mark Rume Ofua speaks English, of course. In addition to that, he speaks Yoruba and French, at least basic French. And this is wonderful. It means that he can go to our neighboring countries and still be able to communicate. He's a 2006 graduate of Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, University of Ibadan, the premier university in Nigeria. He also has a Master's of Science degree in veterinary medicine in the year 2009 from the University of Ibadan. He has held a number of positions, which include as the West African representative and consultant, Wild Africa Fund, founder and chairman, Pangolin Nigeria Trust, Lagos State, Nigeria. He has also been the vice chairman, Nigerian Veterinary Medical Association, Lagos State Chapter, and then Nigeria representative and consultant, Wild Africa Fund. And well, he has volunteered his services at different points in time as a veterinarian. He's the chairman, St. Mark's Animal Rescue Foundation, Lagos State, Nigeria. He's also the director, St. Mark's Animal Hospital and Shelter, Lagos State, Nigeria. And of course, he's a vet clinician that offers the services in various veterinary clinics and to people who also have need of his services. He has undergone a fantastic training in hepatology, pathology studies in the morphology, habitation, health, and management of the ball python, Southwest Nigeria. It was a fantastic training. No wonder he moves around with pythons. Probably he can release one of the pythons during the presentation to come to the screen and greet us. All right, just kidding. He has undergone many other trainings that I will not be talking about this afternoon. I think, let me just quickly allow Dr. Mark Ofua to bring his fantastic presentation to us on why wildlife, but then why not? Over to you now, Dr. Mark Ofua.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, sir. I am quite honored to be here. Thank you very much, Dr. Mirinde. It's a great pleasure to be here and to talk with colleagues on wildlife. Dr. Mirinde, I presume I can go ahead, yes?
Yes, you can share. You can reshare.
All right, thank you. So while we're sharing, on my neck, I have Jake. Jake is a ball python and he's my mascot. I use him to teach people to overcome their fear of snakes. And we've gone quite around a bit, meeting people and helping people to overcome their fear of snakes. Okay. And so welcome to today's presentation. Why wildlife, but then why not? I'm Dr. Mark Ofua. I'm a veterinarian, a wildlife vet, a conservationist, a herpetologist, so many. It's very interesting to give today's topic, and since I know the theme that we coined the topic from was human wildlife domestic animal interface, to talk about the clash, the human wildlife clash, and then the dangers inherent in it. But since I will be speaking predominantly to undergraduates, I also want to use the opportunity to pique their interests in veterinary wildlife. Veterinary wildlife largely in West Africa generally, and in Nigeria particularly, has really been in an understatement, and it's high time to change the status quo. So without much ado, I would go into the lecture proper. Why wildlife, but then why not? We'll start with a broad definition. What is wildlife? On my screen, I have a very good representation of what comes to mind when we hear the word wildlife. That's animal, a leopard, with that expression on its face is one I don't want to meet, because after that expression, what comes next is an attack. But wildlife, if we might define broadly, is an organism. We usually tend to make the assumption that wildlife is pertains just to animals, but it's actually plants or animals that occur in their natural condition, independent of human intervention. So these are plants or animals that are seen in their natural niche, in their natural state, in their natural phase, without being introduced by man or fed by man or controlled by man. Their livelihood is not controlled by man. So it refers to creatures that are not domesticated, tamed, or bred, as against our domestic animals, which we are more used to as veterinarians. So with that definition, you find out that yes, wildlife correctly, I would now be focusing more on the animal aspect of wildlife because we're veterinarians here. So yes, wildlife is, like we think, the wild animals, lions, tigers, elephants, the aquatic animals, your sharks, dolphins, and all. But also it refers and pertains to animals that are around us, but not necessarily wild. Because when we say wildlife, we tend to think of dangerous animals. It's a different ball game. So the snakes around us, the lizards, the birds, they are wildlife. Even the wall gecko in my house is categorized as wildlife because even though it's in my house, its presence there is not dictated by me, and I do not overtly feed it or such. So any of animals as such is categorized as wildlife. Now, if you have this definition in your mind, you realize that the wildlife field we're talking about is a very, very large field. Now, how truly wild is the world? So with our definition now, we're beginning to take another look at wildlife from being just the wild, dangerous animals in the bush to animals that are even around us. So therefore, since we're not only talking about animals that are secluded in thick forests, but also animals that are around us that are wild, there definitely is some level of interface. You see, so they affect us, we affect them by our activities. And even for the animals in the forest, there is also that level of interface, some of which we are going to talk about today. So far from being secluded, wildlife interface with domestic animals and human health has increased, the interface has increasingly become an issue of concern. We have zoonotic diseases such as tuberculosis, anthrax, brucellosis, and all such being transferred from wildlife to domestic animals. I think recently Nigerians dealt with the case of anthrax. Is it anthrax? In cattle. How did it translate from wildlife to cattle? It's another topic of discussion, but if I tell you the link, it's very, very amazing. Now, on the other hand, on the flip side, there is also disease being transmitted. Zoonosis, of course, is a two-way event. There's also disease being transmitted from domestic animals to wildlife. And that is also of concern because we're dealing with extinction of the species, and we have domestic animal disease, in quotes, decimating wildlife. Recently, there was an outbreak of avian influenza that killed over 13,000 sea lions, and it's still killing because the case is still being handled till now. And it's believed that domestic avians transmitted it to wild avians, that transmitted it to seabirds, that took it to the sea lions. So you see that this interface, it's a back and forth thing, and is one that is very, very disturbing, and we can no longer continue to turn a blind eye to it. In Nigeria currently, Lassa fever has been a scourge. Lassa fever in the year of COVID killed more people in Nigeria than COVID-19 virus. And I'm sure if the Lassa fever was a thing that spilled well up, outside our shores, there will have been a hue and cry about it, but it's limited to Nigeria. So we are trying to deal with our problem as best as we can. Now, we have talked about wildlife. We have talked about the need for us to be interested in wildlife because we can no longer continue to pay lip service to it. It's in our face, it's here with us, and it's something we must deal with. So who is the person that is equipped to deal with the health of wildlife? Because most of the ways wildlife affects humans in so many and so different ways. There is source of livelihood. It will interest you to note, for example, that the decimation of wildlife is directly linked to our survival as humans. I remember as a child growing up, our parents would tell us the good old days. And we would dream of days when things were so much better than it was then. Well, about 40 something years later, I'm telling my children the good old days of when I was young. And they are wondering how good it must have been as at that time. So you find out that things keep getting tighter and harder. And we really do not know why. If we sit down to think about it, we would be able to draw a direct line to how we decimate our wildlife, animal, and plants. Now, there are many ways in which wildlife affects humans, but as veterinarians, where we are interested in is health, the health aspect. So who is the wildlife veterinarian? Wildlife practice is a non-traditional aspect of veterinary medicine that requires clinicians and students to apply knowledge gained from a solid background of domestic animal practice. Let me explain what I mean. Veterinary practice, yes, we deal with domestic animals majorly, companion animal, food animal, and all that, poultry, large animal, and all that. You need this knowledge. So you need this knowledge of domestic animal practice to translate to wildlife practice. It's non-traditional because it's not a very popular thing, especially here in Nigeria, West Africa. But if you look at it, if you're talking about, say, eagles, ostriches, the birds, you need to be well grounded in poultry medicine. If you're talking about the zebras, the giraffes, the donkeys, you need to be well grounded in equine medicine. If you're talking about the cats, the large cats, the small cats, and all, you need, even hyenas and all, you need to be well grounded in companion medicine. So yes, a solid background in domestic animal practice is necessary, but then wildlife takes it away from domestic animal practice to wildlife practice. So the wildlife veterinarian is required to be knowledgeable in the treatment, rehabilitation, and conservation of wild animals. Now, there are different fields for the wildlife veterinarians to play in. You can be a player on the field, which is very, very necessary, especially when you're in the field of conservation. You can be a researcher, you can be in the academic setting, be a researcher, and be churning out results and challenges for people who are on the field, and then answering questions that people who are on the field may have. Or you can even be more conservative and then be relevant in the zoo setting, because wildlife veterinarians are needed there as well. Now, why choose a career in wildlife medicine? Yes, I earlier said I will be focusing on my fellow students and then try to see if I can pick the interest of one or two or three persons to veer off into a career in wildlife medicine, even while we talk about how wildlife interfaces with human existence. I finished University of Ibadan as a domestic animal practitioner, domestic animal health practitioner. I even did my master's in small animal medicine, but I veered off and picked a career in wildlife medicine. So it's something that is very possible. Remember, we said one majorly needs a base in domestic animal medicine. Now that's a picture of me with an elephant somewhere in Kenya. And I chose to label this, at least this time, we can't be accused of eating our patients. There's this sardonic joke that is out there, and veterinarians are accused of eating their patients because we deal with domestic animals and we also eat domestic animals. One thing in wildlife, nobody will make this assumption and accusation, Because yes, you're dealing with animals that can eat you easily or kill easily. If that elephant thought of it, I would be gone in minutes. Let's not say seconds, in minutes. So wildlife is a field of play that removes you totally from the traditional field of play, and it plunges you into something more serious, something more challenging, and something more intriguing. Now, the first reason why I want to challenge you out there to consider a career in wildlife medicine is it's a less populated niche in veterinary practice, especially in West Africa and in Nigeria. I challenge my fellow students if because I remember when I was in 500, 600 level, I started thinking, what branch of veterinary practice will I be embracing? I realized poultry, the field is full. Large animal practice, the field is not only full, we have quacks contending with us bone for bone, as in contending with us at a very, very alarming pace. Companion animal practice, dogs and cats, the field is full. And so on, large animal, the same thing. But I can put it to you that wildlife medicine is a niche that is very, very, very less populated. It is very, very scanty, and you should consider a career in this path. The field of wildlife practice is so broad, so amazing that if you just but sit down and think of it, it's actually overwhelming. Um, let's take, for example, elephants. Say, oh, I want to deal with elephants, or I want to deal with pachyderms. Now, in the pachyderm, amongst the pachyderms, you can now have a veterinarian who is a wildlife veterinarian who is an expert in pachyderms. Now, that is just one field. Now, in that class, you can have one who is expert in capture. You have another who is expert in cardiac functions. Another who is expert in neurology. The entire field of veterinary medicine can be applied to just pachyderms. You now take another animal. Okay, for example, let's take the cats. You now can go to small cats, large cats. I mean, the field is wide and amazing. Among the cats, you can now have a lion expert. You can now have a leopard expert. You can now have a cheetah expert. You can now have, so, and then even amongst the lion experts, you can now have one that is an expert in dentistry, another who is an expert in neurology, another who is an expert. So the field is so wide. And then remember, in all of this, we're even just talking about the field wildlife veterinarians. By the time you now take it to research and zoo practice, you find out that actually there are jobs begging for people to fill them. Currently in Nigeria, as I speak to you, if they want to do wildlife capture or major things on wildlife, they actually go to bring in expatriates to collar elephants or collar lions or track leopards and all that. This is one of the things that motivated me to go into the field to study, because imagine the financial involvement bringing an expatriate, paying his flight, paying his hotel, and then paying his fees. If we have local vets who are wildlife experts that can key into this, it's a very rich field, and that's one of the things that motivated me into going into this field. Another reason why you would want to consider a career in wildlife practice is that wildlife practitioners are key role players in the One Health concepts. You see, now One Health deals with the interface between humans and animals, and then the environmental interactions. So it's a very large and wide field. But when we're dealing with the health interface between humans and animals, the majority of the current and emerging diseases is actually from wildlife. So you find out that the wildlife veterinarian is a major player. So even if you don't want to be in the field, if you want to work in epidemiology, you don't really want to interface with this wildlife because of the danger, inherent danger, and all that. You find out that as an epidemiologist, wildlife veterinarian, you are a key role player in the One Health concepts. The wildlife vet, with his knowledge of zoonosis and his expertise of the wild and how he interacts with the environment and how the wild interacts with the environment, is appropriately positioned to be a key player in the One Health scheme of events. Disease monitoring, surveillance, control, public health. This is another role, another field where the wildlife veterinarian is very, very relevant. And instead of going to meet people to look for relevance, they actually come to you for relevance because you are necessary. Another reason why you want to think about the field of wildlife medicine is the relevance in the field of conservation. Now, conservation is a whole topic of its own. How the species, losing the species, and how their decline is affecting man and our survival. It's a major thing of concern. Currently, there's been many COP. I think recently we had COP25, COP27, and all that. These are world leaders coming together to see how we can better conservation, reverse the trend of extinction, and better save our species. Now, in the field of conservation, especially when it pertains to animal aspects of wildlife, the wildlife veterinarian is key. You become relevant outside the shores of this country. You're relevant inside, you're working in conservation, you're working to save species inside Nigeria, West Africa, outside Nigeria. You're needed everywhere. People need your input. The fact that other conservationists, other rules in conservation, they need the wildlife veterinarian to thrive or to survive. For example, the zoologists, the biologists, other people in the field, they always would need a wildlife vet to attend to the animals of interest and all that. So that is another. So if you say, you don't want to be in the field to work in the area of conservation, you are very, very necessary. And the call for the wildlife veterinarian is amazing. This is where we were dealing with a sea turtle that was rescued all the way in the Maldives. And we tagged it, and we are following the movement of this sea turtle. Because from all the way in the Maldives in Asia, they come to Nigeria, they come to West Africa to nest. You see how the world is connected. So the wildlife veterinarian actually is an international player. You play across borders, you play across the globe, especially when it comes to health of wildlife and animals. You are an international player. So this is one of the reasons why you would want to consider a career in wildlife medicine. Now, with the projected risk of losing half, the IUCN has done this projection that we'll be losing half of all species by 2050. The race is on to reverse the trend and save species from extinction. The wildlife vet is a crucial element in this race to save the species. And let me tell you, funds are put apart by governments of the world to ensure that we reverse the trend of extinction. So what you find out is, while you're doing your work as a wildlife veterinarian, you are also a hero, in quotes, because you are saving the species you're working with from going extinct. You are contributing in the part of introduction, reproduction. You're contributing in the part of the health of the species. You're contributing in the part of reintroduction of key locally extinct species. So you are working as a wildlife veterinarian, but you're also serving a greater good. That's what I'm trying to explain. You're also serving a greater good of saving the earth. So you're not just working for your pocket or working to earn a salary or make a living. You've gone beyond that. You're saving the earth. And we have this saying in Nigeria that if all your friends, if you have a circle of friends and all your friends are progressing and doing well, you should rejoice because it will come to your turn. Let me flip that saying round and say, if all the species around us are going extinct, then we should be afraid because it's coming to us. And we can see the trend everywhere. There's war going on in the Middle East now. There's war going on in between Russia and Ukraine. Even locally, we have unrests. We have people dying every day in this country, bandits and all that. The thing is, we do not see these events as pointing to extinctions for human because we're still plenty. But by the time the species begin to go extinct and life begins to become harder and harder and things begin to become tougher, the human species and our survival will also be challenged. So the wildlife veterinarian goes beyond just trying to earn a living and make money to doing something positive for the planet, reversing the trend of extinction and saving animals from going extinct. Wildlife veterinarians are needed in sanctuaries to tend to rescues. This is so much, and we have very few of them in Nigeria. The truth is, the more wildlife veterinarians we have, the more sanctuaries will come up, the more we'll be able to save the wildlife around us. And then we play a key role in resolving human-wildlife conflicts, which is one of the major themes for this lecture. Where humans live in proximity to wildlife, there is always this conflict between the two parties, with wildlife attacking and destroying human habitation and farms and all, and then human returning the favor and all that. The wildlife veterinarian plays a key role in resolving this conflict, in standing in the interface and making things better and easier on both sides. Now, the wildlife veterinarian is also needed in situ and ex situ reproductive management of threatened species, develop guidelines at all levels for governments, for guidelines for rescue, guidelines for interface with our wild, guidelines for saving the environment, guidelines for conservation. The wildlife veterinarian is needed for this. And in the reintroduction of species, in Nigeria, we have cheetah, the rhino, what other animal functionally extinct in Nigeria. We don't have them anymore. I remember growing up, we used to have cheetahs in Yankari and KNG area, but they've gone extinct. Rhinos, the same thing. Now, if these species are going to be reintroduced, and I can tell you there are plans to reintroduce species in this country, the wildlife veterinarian is needed for these events. Reintroduction cannot be done without a resident wildlife veterinarian that would attend to this feature. The wildlife veterinarian also is needed in the capture, restraint, transport, and translocation of animals. So you see, from what I have been saying, the wildlife veterinarian there is no way you would look for relevance or look for work or look for what to do. Because almost any event that has to do with wildlife, you are needed. To capture the wildlife, the drugs are needed, dosages and all that. The veterinarian is key in that. In restraints, when you restrain an animal, you're thinking of the respiration, you're thinking of visceral action. For example, if you want to restrain an elephant or rhinoceros, there's going to be ruminal stasis. After a while, the veterinarian who knows what ruminal stasis is and how to counter it and all that. Now, in the transport, translocation, survival, and whatnot of the wildlife, the vet is necessary. And then also, if you want to work in a unique and challenging environment, wildlife practice is it for you. Domestic animal practice, you're in the hospital. Well, large animal practice, you are in the farm. Basically, that's it. Poultry practice, you are in the farm. But in wildlife practice, you are everywhere. You are in the forest, you are in town, you are in the air, you are in the water, you are everywhere. So there's a thin line between work and fun. When I am working, people tell me I'm having fun. Well, I think so too, because it's interesting, but it's supposed to be work. No two wildlife experience is the same. If we go to trap a lion in Kaduna, we come to trap a lion in Lagos. Two different experiences totally, it's usually intriguing, and if to challenge your intuition, you would need to you would need to be in the job. You see, so the word boredom is alien to those in wildlife practice. There is always job satisfaction guaranteed. Like I said, the environment to work, you just can't put a limit to it. That was me in the ocean, in the bottom of the ocean. We were actually doing a study on sea turtles, and we had to do deep sea diving to check. Now we have these around us here in Nigeria, and then the coral reef. We also have a reef. The health of the sea world, the marine life, is dependent on the health of the coral reef. So you need veterinarian. The coral is an animal actually, so you need the reef, yeah, animals. So you need a veterinarian to help with the life of the coral and to ensure. So you see that the field of play is amazing. You can't put a limit to it, and it's very interesting. And then also this is a challenge and also an opportunity. There is lack of comprehensive data on wildlife population, diseases, and management. It's a challenge, yes. It is. This data is needed to make proper policies and adjustments to saving our wildlife. Now, because this is a challenge, it's also an opportunity for the wildlife veterinarian to come in to provide these essential data. You see, you are the one here, you're the one in Nigeria, you're the one that can provide this data for the world to use. So this is an opportunity for wildlife veterinarians. Also looking at my time, challenges in wildlife medicine. Well, with every interesting course, there are also challenges to face. There's often limited resources. There are times when you would have to do things with your money. To get started, of course, you would have to do things with your money, buy equipment, medical supplies. In short, medical supplies, it's a huge problem because if you go to the market, all the drugs you see are for domestic animals majorly. You now would have to be very, very intuitive to be able to extrapolate that into wildlife practice. So yes, that is a challenge we have to deal with. It's a problem, especially for large and critically endangered species that require either large volume of the common drug or little volume of drugs that are not readily available. Now you work in dangerous environments. If you have if you are someone who is spurred by risk and challenges, this is the field for you. Imagine where I was working with while we were doing the studies on the sea turtle, we saw sharks. Yes, there were sharks in the water with us. There was a dolphin with us. There was a stingray and a manta with us. So yes, you work in dangerous environments. You might be dealing with stressed animals. The risk for bites and all that is ever present. That is a veterinarian giving the lion dental scaling. Yes, that's a veterinary procedure, and you are needed to do that. We did a bit of dentistry on the lion. And then there's the joke of people needed to bathe crocodiles and will be paid huge money to bathe crocodiles. Well, there you have it. The veterinarian is needed in such events as well. So yes, it's a challenging work environment. And then also species-specific knowledge. In veterinary medicine, even with domestic animals, yes, you need to be species specific. For example, it's easy to say I'm a veterinarian, but you need knowledge in small animal practice to be able to handle dogs well. Okay, let's say you're even a small animal practitioner and you deal with dogs. You also would realize that each individual breed of dogs have their different challenges and their different expectations. Now, this is even more so in wildlife. So you need to know species specificness. You need to read. You need to meet and rub minds with others in the field. You need to teach yourself. I go for courses every year, and I have started another one this year because I need to be on top of my game. If not, you will be archaic and you would be recording losses. You see, it's easier to judge the wildlife veterinarian than to judge the small animal practitioner. I mean, I lose a dog on my table. I give you reasons why we lost the dog. The owner gets another dog. We move on. But if you lose a large animal like an elephant or a lion, it will be very difficult for you to explain that out. So you need to be knowledgeable to know what you're doing. And you pray. Yes, the wildlife practice is one practice where you pray for luck as opposed to companion or other aspects of medicine, because you can do everything right and everything will still go wrong with wildlife medicine. Now, there's also the pressure of conservation, because every work you're doing directly translates to conservation. Even if you're dealing with a lion in the zoo, it translates to conservation. So there's a pressure on you to make decisions about euthanasia, translocation, rehabilitation of animals. There's ethics to consider and all that. So this puts pressure on the wildlife veterinarian to make the right choices. For example, a zoo calls you to treat a certain animal. There's the ethical consideration of how the animal was procured. Was it procured correctly? Are you being an accessory to the event or something? All this you'll have to think about. There's the legal and the ethical consideration, like I mentioned before. You need to work closely with government agencies. You need to give reports of what you do. You go to the wild. When they say you're called to a lion that has been caught in a snare, you need to meet the government to take permission, because if you go to the lion, for example, to remove the snare, and government agencies meet you at that moment, there's no difference between you and a poacher. You only can be speaking English. So you have to take permission and all that, and then give reports. Drugs used in wildlife is highly controlled. You need to give reports of how you use it, you see, because if these are not closely monitored, the veterinarian can as well become a poacher, because he has this interface with wildlife. Then there's also the risk of zoonotic diseases. I work with apes as well, gorillas, chimpanzees, and all. Now, these guys are very close to us with the DNA. We share about 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees. And because of this, the risk of transmitting diseases is very, very high. I remember one time we rescued a chimpanzee and it was sick. We started treating. We actually treated the chimpanzee. It started getting better and then it fell sick again because it contracted malaria from us. And the chimpanzee was not, they are usually in the wild not equipped with antibodies to treat malaria. So it fell ill and the sickness was even worse than when it was rescued. And we had to start treating for malaria and all that. And if you go on the internet, there's really not lots of material for you to read on malaria in chimpanzees. So you find out that as you're working, you're also providing data like I mentioned earlier. Now, the illegal wildlife trade is a major problem to biodiversity and wildlife welfare. And you might be called, like I mentioned earlier, to treat wildlife that was illegally acquired. There's the ethic aspect to consider. Public awareness, public education. You also would need to be telling people and explaining what you're doing. I rescue snakes and people think I am crazy. In fact, I'm used to the facts that I might be a bit crazy or eccentric, as the case may be, but there's also that aspect to think. The human-wildlife livestock conflict is always going on, and the wildlife veterinarian is needed. The way forward, conservation, education. I want to charge our academic institution to go a step further in making conservation medicine a practice in our schools, so that we have veterinarians who are more grounded in wildlife medicine as they come out of school. They are better prepared to practice. Capacity building. Outside our schools, we should invest in building veterinarians that are equipped to deal with wildlife and wildlife medicine around us. We should have more of this kind of interface where people on the field come to lecture or to talk to people in academia to build a better connect with between the two parties, a better synergy. Because honestly, we need academia. I myself, I am forced to go back to the classroom now because of the questions that I'm encountering on the field that needs answers. So if there's better synergy, I really should not take time to go back to the classroom. I should be on the field and be sending these questions to the academics who will be better positioned to provide results and answers. So this is another way forward. The One Health approach, if we embrace our duty or our role as wildlife veterinarians and conservationists, you find out that we will be sought after to play our role on the One Health table. As it is now in Nigeria, the governments and health establishments and whatnot have been overlooking the veterinarian in their role on the One Health table because we have not come out to say, oh, we are here and we can do this. During the COVID-19, what roles did veterinarians play? During the avian influenza outbreak, what roles did veterinarians play on the One Health table? You see, and then community engagement is another way forward. We need to work with our local community. For example, the person in Jos, oh my goodness, the wildlife you have there, begin to interface with the local community and with the wildlife, even while you are a student. Begin to pick interest in the community around you. You find out that there's so much to do and there's so much that can be done. Thank you very much for listening. I'm sure my time is rounding up. I will stop here, and then if there are questions, I will be glad to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Prof. Again,
okay.
Sir. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mirende. Thank you so much, Dr. Mark. Dr. Mark, thank you so very much for that fantastic lecture on wildlife. So fantastic that some of us are thinking of changing our field to join you in wildlife medicine, for finding a way to add it to our specialization. This is very fantastic. The vastness, of wildlife medicine and conservation. I'm looking as a researcher at a lot of research that we can do. Wildlife. There's so much that we can do. So much that left undone over the years. The vast potential of wildlife medicine. This is wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Mark Ofua, for opening our eyes to realize so much that is expected of us, so much that we can do, And one thing is that it made it look very interesting, very fantastic, very adventurous. Going into wildlife medicine, I hope that somebody is being inspired to want to go into wildlife medicine, especially those who are very adventurous, those who are outgoing, you want to use all your energy and ideas, to help in wildlife conservation. This is something that we should all consider. Thank you so very much, Dr. Mark, for this wonderful lecture. At this point, we would open the floor for a few questions. If you have a question you want to ask, you can either raise up your hand or you just unmute and go ahead and ask the question. Dr. Mirende has given us, I think, just 5 minutes to consider questions. So if you have a question, please go ahead and ask. Yes, I can see a hand there.
Dr. Okoro.
Dr. Okoro promised your hand is up. Please go ahead. And then after that.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, all. This is actually a very beautiful presentation. Okay, are you hearing me? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. I said, thank you very much. It's actually a very beautiful presentation. The wild actually is filled with so many beautiful things, and just like you have said, the vet has a very important role to play. My only question is, um, now if somebody wants to go into wildlife medicine, you find out that most of those for you to get what you need to practice very well as a wildlife practitioner, I don't know if if you can get it here in Nigeria or you have to go out, because I found that it is easier for us with the vets to incorporate into the wildlife space if you just go into maybe public health, because you know there's a lot of spillovers now happening and emerging and emerging diseases. Like currently now, I'm in a team about working, but I find that you are needed as a vet because of the data integrity and all. But now we want to go into wildlife medicine. I know that countries like Australia, kind of, because of the plenty of the NGOs whereby they have to do rescue of all these endangered species, which are mostly in the IUCN red list. You find that most of it, that's why they actually harness the potential of the veterinarians. But in Nigeria here, I don't know if there are, but I'm asking if there are any, because most since I've now been in kind of in the wildlife space. I've been thinking of thinking into the public health aspect of it because of the whole interaction between the wild and also the humans, and because of the high level of spillovers happening now. Because and also after that, I also want to contribute by saying I don't know if maybe in future they can start up, just like you said, incorporating conservation and use of ecology in the veterinary medicine, because you find that recent papers are using ecological concept to answer plenty different questions, because you find that we are in a one space and humans are disturbing the world. As long as we keep disturbing the world, that's this spillovers also to humans. So we find that if we create the resources and the space for these wild animals to thrive, then we too will be safe and they also will be safe and everybody will find. That's what the whole essence of wildlife concept, which I understand. But my major question I want to know is, if you want to be a wildlife practitioner, whereby you have to treat this wildlife, we are taught quite well in school. I'm a product of University of George, by the way. So if you want to further, where can you further? Are there scholarships outside? If there are scholarships, I've checked, they are not actually plenty. They are just a few. So that's my question. Are there anyone also in Nigeria? Thank you very much. That's my question.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I think Dr. Mark has taken note of that question. Dr. Blessing, you have a question? Go ahead and ask.
Right. Okay.
And Dr. Omirinde, you also have a question?
It's a form of just an addendum to what Dr. Mark said towards the tail end of his presentation, trying to challenge we in the academia, especially the aspect of the curriculum review that will incorporate the aspect of wildlife in detail, at least starting from the preclinical. I think the only university, the only faculty in Nigeria that has started that is BUK. BUK has incorporated the aspect of wildlife anatomy, the reptilians and the likes, which is quite very, very interesting. So I think when that is done, the physiology, biochemistry, and then up to the medicine aspect. So with that, they have a background knowledge. And then by the time they go to the field, at least it's going to be very smooth. I think within this, you can help us to push this one more at the meeting of the day, so that especially the aspect of curriculum review should be able to capture that.
At our level, Dr. Mirinde, since we are reviewing our curriculum and you're a member of the curriculum review committee for our new handbook that will be produced, why don't you ensure that that is incorporated as you are reviewing the curriculum?
Yes, No problem. And then to Dr. Mark. Yes, sir. Dr. Mark, you've challenged us too. I don't know, at least now you are on the field, you've come across quite a lot of interesting areas, researchable areas, which at least we can have an extended talk over, maybe after the discussion, at least which we can contribute into. So we'll be glad on that, Dr. Mark. Thank you for the beautiful presentation, sir.
All right, Dr. Mark has taken note of that. Dr. Limome Zetan Pashan asked a question. Please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask.
Good morning. Am I audible? Good morning, sirs. Thank you very much, Dr. Mark, for the beautiful presentation. I first want to ask, that snake on your neck, is it a live snake? Well, that's on the left-hand note. But sincerely, thank you. You really spurred my thoughts around wildlife, but sincerely, it's not my place, so I know that very well. So, but I want to ask a question concerning what have you done so far and all the experiences you've had over the years. I'm really wondering how you could use your influence to curb the wildlife conservation in Nigeria. I think most of our states are really going through a lot. I mean, lots of animals are having so many diseases that just wipes them off the zoo, and the zoos and the wildlife parks are seemingly becoming empty. So I'm really wondering how you could use your influence to like engage the government or something so that we could revive the wildlife status of our country, Nigeria. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, who's next?
All right.
Where is raising hand before?
Yeah, the next Dr. I think you can start responding. Respond to the questions and observations that have been raised. Dr. Mark, you can go ahead and respond.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Prof. And thank you everyone for listening, and thank you for your questions and contributions. I'm glad that I reached at least to one person who would think of how to get started after this lecture. The first speaker said, yes, you touched quite some salient points, how there's a paucity of equipment and things to use in the field, and even how to be relevant in organizations like the IUCN, and how to be a player. The most important thing I'll tell you in that aspect is start. Now, in Nigeria currently, any veterinarian doing wildlife is a trailblazer, which means you are opening the path. It will be easier for people coming after you than it was for you, because you are the one in front blazing a trail. Now start and then build up on. Currently, I see myself as a jack of all trade. And you know what happens to the jack of all trade? He becomes a master of none. But I see this is as important. And I will link it to the last question, the last speaker. Because of what needs to be done, I see myself as trying. My major aim is not to be a wildlife veterinarian. That is not my target. That is not my aim. My aim, my passion, my focus is to wake up wildlife medicine practice in Nigeria. It's to replicate myself such that there are about 1,000, 2,000 of us. Right now, veterinarians in Nigeria are over 10,000 strong, but the wildlife veterinarians, I don't think we're up to 30. So the aim is to populate the place with wildlife veterinarians. And the best way to do it is to start. And then you start creating a niche and you start blazing a trail. You would meet challenges like I opined in the lecture, but you would overcome these challenges because you are necessary, you are needed. Currently, to get drugs to do the work that I'm doing, I have to be running to colleagues outside the country every day with NAFDAC and all that because we need to get these things in. But you find out that once, if, for example, I'm successful in getting a way to bring in drugs in with NAFDAC, the next person who needs those drugs does not have to go through that stress because those drugs are in the country already. So also it is when you break a challenge or when you solve a challenge, you create room for more people to come into that field to populate it and then do more. And then if you look at it from the part of economics, yes, wildlife equipment, drugs and all that are not very much in Nigeria because it won't pay the person importing. I would rather import Oxytex that I know 5,000 farmers will use than to import a drug that only 3 people would buy. You understand from the economics of things. So when wildlife veterinarians are more and the demand is more, you will actually have these drugs or equipment more around. You will have them locally produced. You will have investors come into the country to start producing these things in Nigeria. So we must start from somewhere. And then Dr. Mirinde, yes, thank you very much for taking up the challenge. We need to do more. We need to speak more. We need to say more. We can't rest on our oars. And the last person who asked if the snake on my neck is real, yes, it is real. This is one aspect I didn't put in my lecture. As a wildlife veterinarian, you have the privilege of busting myths and beliefs. The lecture on snake would be another lecture of its own, but I can categorically tell you that 90% of what you know, even as a veterinarian, about snakes is wrong. So that begins to challenge you. Oh, so what do I know? What do I need to unlearn and relearn? And that's where the wildlife veterinarian comes along. There are myths in every animal. Lions, with hippos, rhinos. It's your job to break the myth and cancel them. So I have a live python on my neck and I'm still alive. Yes, you also said we need to revive the wildlife space. And that is true. It's because the veterinary medical aspect of wildlife has been dormant this while. It's what allowed our wildlife to be depleted. As I'm talking with you now, I am a key element in negotiating and in talking with the government. First, I work with the government agencies on seizing wildlife from the illegal wildlife trade, stopping poachers and all. I also work with government on making laws to better protect our wildlife and to enforce these laws. So you find out that the role of the wildlife veterinarian in conservation is very broad. You have work to do. And the people, as in the whole of creation, is waiting for you to come out and start. And it doesn't have to be anything big. You can start with bats, for example. If you see the interest, if you realize the interest that are on bats, it's amazing. And how we need those creatures around us. You can pick any animal and focus on it. You don't have to be like me that I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere because I want to raise this awareness for our wildlife. You can be everywhere, but you can also pick an animal, become an expert in that animal. You'll be sought after around the world of that animal. Thank you very much.
Wow. All right, so I like that. Whether the snake on your neck is real, you know. That's wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Mark. You know, when I was in East Africa in Uganda, I showed them my picture with a python. And then one of my colleagues took that same picture and went and made a presentation in a school with it. And they asked her that person inside that picture, he's still alive up to today? And she said, yes, he's alive, you know. All right. Thank God for wildlife and thank God for that python around your neck. You know, beautiful python. I think I'll be hiring that python from you one of these days, you know, to have a good time with it. That's great. Maybe we can take one more question if there is. Before I hand over to Dr. Mirinde, if there is one more question, we can take it. we're already out of time. I don't seem to be seeing the hands. Those who raise their hands can bring them down. So we have new people raise their hands. There are. Then Dr. Omirinde will be rounding up for us. So if there's any other question, just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. If you have any question, just go ahead, unmute and ask the question.
How dangerous is the python on your neck?
Thank you very much for that question. Like I said, 90% of the things you know about snakes are wrong. Snakes don't want to harm us. They don't want to hurt us. They just want to be left alone, especially for snakes in the wild. The python I have on my neck has come to realize that the human is not a threat to it. So it's what there's a language we use for such. It's habituated. So it's really, it knows I'm not a threat. And so he doesn't feel threatened. Snakes only attack when they feel threatened. Now, one mistake we do in wildlife practice, and Dr. Mirinde also made mention of that thing when he was giving his submission, we make the mistake of attributing human values to wildlife or to animals, and that's a mistake. You have been feeding a human being for 2-3 years. Of course, you don't expect the human being to harm you, you know, but we now extend this to animals. We had the case of the zoo mishap recently, I think in Ife, where the lion attacked a keeper and killed the keeper, and the keeper had been feeding the lion from when it was a cub. Now, the mistake the keeper did, it was a very sad event. The mistake the keeper did was to think the lion understands human values of gratitude. The lion was just being a lion. So this also where the wildlife veterinarian is key in teaching people how about animals, and also it's a challenge for the wildlife veterinarian not to attribute human values to animals. So with this snake on my neck now, I am conscious there is a snake on my neck. For example, my body, I am not a threat or concern to it. Right now, it's only focusing on my hands because my hands are the ones moving up and down. And it's wondering if the hands are a threat to it or not. So I'm not in any danger from the snake, and it's habituated. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Professor Ibokwe, for that question. Thank you, Dr. Mark, for that fantastic response to both questions. At this point, let me hand over to Dr. Jami Omirinde. Please take over from this point.
Oh, thank you very much, Prof. And then thank you, the presenter. I think this segment is for announcement. Our next seminar series, which is the 15th seminar series, will center on artificial intelligence and big data relevance in veterinary medicine. And a senior lecturer in person of Dr. Mohammed Dauda Guni from the Department of Clinical Sciences, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, University Malaysia, Kelantan, has been invited for that, and that will be taking place Wednesday, 22nd May, 2024. So we are all invited for that presentation. Thank you all for honoring our invitation. So please do have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone. So have a nice day. Feel free to get in contact with Dr. Mark. We've displayed his email and phone number earlier on. In case you missed it, you can contact me or Dr. Omirinde so that you can link up with Dr. Mark. Still need some further collaboration as far as wildlife is concerned. But let me read out his email again for the benefit for some of us who were not around at the beginning. The email is mark2003 at yahoo.com. saintmark2003 at yahoo.com. Saint as in SAINTMARK 2003 at yahoo.com or at gmail.com. That is his email. You can get in touch with Dr. Mark. You'll need some further collaboration. If you are very interested in the wildlife medicine and conservation. So thank you so very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you for being part of this faculty seminar of the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure.